Audio, 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 audio. Test, test, test. Okay, much better.
On today's episode, we will be
Take 3. On today's episode, we'll be mounting the clip-ons, the headlight brackets, and the headlight. We'll also be mounting the rear sets. We're gonna do a little talk about how that setup works, because we do have 2 options for that. One, if you're running the original drum brake, or if you're gonna be running, like we are in this case, with the disc in the rear. So you need to add a master cylinder to it, and it kind of changes how things mount. And also we'll be mounting the exhaust. At this stage, I just kind of want to get everything placed so that when we move on to the seat, we know where everything's going to be, and just kind of get a better visual of how things will look before we move on to that. We want to make an electronics tray for this as well, because the customer wants to have 2 seat options. So we'll make one that has the cafe cowling, and then we'll make a just kind of a brat seat so that he can ride, with a passenger. And yeah, I think that's about it. So let's get started. To mount the headlights, we're using the MotoDemic Headlight Bracket Kit. We're using a 54 at the bottom, and then we're using a 47 because we're actually going to grab the portion of the fork that necks down. When you're speccing out what headlight bracket you're going to use, you want to measure where you're going to mount the fork before you order the headlight bracket kit. Sometimes you want to mount the fork higher up, and in that case we'd be using 247s, but in this case we want it lower so we can get the headlight as centered with the gas tank as possible. So we're using the 54 and the 47. We also offer the LSL, which is a similar product. It does the same thing, but we like these because they actually come apart. And so we're not going to have to take the top clamp off the bike to install these. And later on, if you ever need to replace something, you just unbolt these and they come apart. So that's why we generally use these. So this bottom one is the 54 millimeters, which is the same size as the fork tube where the fork clamps. And these can go either direction depending on what kind of width you need here. And here we have the 47, and this is the area where I was talking about. I think it's 48 millimeters, and then this necks down to 47. You're going to want to know where exactly you're clamping these, right? If I had this further up, then I'd want 247s, but we're trying to get the headlight a little lower, so we're clamping to the 54. In some cases, you don't have any land up top. On the BMWs, for example, this is way down, and so you can't clamp on that lower diameter. So you just want to pay attention to that. Also, you can see here why these things have the ability to come apart completely. It makes it pretty nice. Just a lot easier for installation. We're gonna put the clip-ons next, and we're using the WoodCraft Clip-Ons. I like them because they kind of match the triples, and also it's a similar design, or a 3-piece design where it comes apart, or a 2-piece design. So you can do the same thing. You can take it apart without having to take the triple off. And the WoodCrafts are mainly more of a racing brand. And so, if you crash your bike at the track, they're really easy to take apart and replace the component that you broke instead of having to take half your front end apart. Kind of a loose fit now, and we'll grab the headlight. This is the headlight we'll be using for this build. This is an LSL bucket, and then we machine a reflector, and then for the actual headlight itself, that is a JW speaker LED. So it kind of looks like a projector, but it's an LED. And then the housing kind of gives it a kind of a retro look. Also, this headlight is DOT, so this is completely street legal, high beam and low beam. We might use the blaze pins up here as well, but for right now, I'm just using some screws just to hold it in place. These brackets come in different lengths. This is the super short length, and with that length, we have about an inch of clearance back here between the back of the headlight bucket and the steer tube. And remember that this is also a 45mm offset for the 18-inch wheel. So if we were to be running, let's say a 30mm offset, these forks would be, about 10mm closer or 15mm closer to the steer tube, and then we would have fitment issues between the two. So if you're running, 30, 35mm offsets, I'd probably stay away from the super short brackets. I'd probably go with the short bracket, only because you'll definitely be hitting the steer tube. These are the WoodCraft Clip-Ons. It's a 3-piece design. Well, the clamping mechanism is a 2-piece design, and so it allows you to just kind of put it on. You don't have to take the top clamp off to slip these on. And then this angle here, I think it's 13 degrees is what they set these to. They come in all different diameters, just about every diameter there is, and then you can get these with different heights. So this one is just the normal one. Some go up about an inch, and then there's another set that's about 3 inches higher. These are directional, and there is a right and a left. Just make sure that you have the handlebars facing down. If you put them on upside down, the handlebars will kind of face upward instead of downward. These bars are also hollow, so if you decide to run the Moto Gadget bar and turn signals, you can run the wires inside of the handlebar.
I was lost in the art of a foreign nation, in a shop to escape the rain.
We're just using a rod to tap out the swing arm bolts so we can install the rear sets. You want to use a rod so that you don't lose the swing arm. We also need to remove the lower engine mount bolt. And I've just put a jack under the motor to hold it up because I don't have all the mounts to the motor installed right now. This is the Rearset bracket for our CB650 Rearset bracket. You just remove these bolts and then slip them back in.
Doesn't sound like much, but it's enough to make me stay. It's just a small letter, but more than 1,000 words. 'Cause it's a small letter that
We're using a Gixxer master cylinder, and this will be to actuate the disc conversion on the rear. So the attachment for the brake master cylinder, you can use this. Either you can drill out the hole in the rear set, or you can just throw a screw in there. But what I like to do is completely remove it, and then I just replace it with an M8 rod end. And then for the bolts, I just use a Gixxer rotor bolt, and that bolt comes from a 2011 Gixxer 600, 750 and up. And it's kind of cool because it's an M6 thread. The shoulder is M8 or 8 millimeters, so it fits right in there. And then it next it down to an M6, which is what we have in the rear sets. I think it just looks a little cleaner. Functions about the same. This is the Cognito Moto universal rear set. And then it's got the adjustment or the indexable arm here. So these three holes aren't on the same angle as these three holes or all these holes around here. So it gives you, you could go there, that's one, and then this one lines up, so that's another degree, and then moving it on, then that one lines up. So you've got a ton of adjustment here and a lot of fine tuning available. When we mount onto the rear set bracket, you want to keep this arm perpendicular with this the best you can. That way you get a nice even throw. So what you want to do is kind of mock it up, kind of get an idea of where that's going to be. So that looks pretty good, and this looks, I'm going to have to bring this one down. The Master has some adjustment in it to change the angle a little bit, but that looks about right. And we have a nice perpendicular here, so when we throw, we're not just pushing it down, we're actually getting action in this way. Here you want to pay attention to the orientation of your foot peg, because we're going to lock it down. It also gets another nut down there, but I can't seem to find it right now, so I'll have to come back. If you were running the original drum brake, this is the part you would need. This spline section here goes into this hole back there, and then this just attaches to it, and then the brake, this part will then actuate this piece here. So it's a little bit different when you go to the disc brake conversion. So back here, we'll be putting passenger pegs. He wants to keep this so he can do 2-up riding. It's not really ideal because they're pretty close. You're not going to be able to tow it with somebody back here. Normally this is removed, but we are doing the 2-seat and he did want to keep it, so we're just going to leave it. Also for the rear sets, we have these heel guards that just kind of mount behind the rear set. And they look pretty cool, but in this case with this here, I just think it's going to look too cluttered, so we're not going to run it. But it is a kind of a cool thing to use, especially to protect your heel from the chain. Also, when we get into wiring the bike, we'll run a pressure switch that runs off of the pressure from the brake master cylinder. Normally this is a pull switch on a spring, but since we don't have any of that, the easiest thing to do is run the pressure switch right into the M unit. So over here on the shifter side, basically the same. Got the kickstand right there. I just need to make sure that when we're shifting, we're not running into that. This here is the offset shifter arm. When you remove the original pedal, this is what allows you to reattach to the transmission. For some reason, this is one of my most favorite parts that we make. I just kind of like the design. It's a neat little part, just clean. But anyway, it slips right onto here. And I like to keep this as straight up as I can. For this, you just need to make sure that you put this on far enough to where the screw fits in the groove of the shaft. There's a little groove there that's kind of a redundant safety that keeps it from coming off. All right, so now that we have these two where they're going to be, we include this long linkage, and so we'll need to cut it to length. Inside of this linkage, all this is a piece of threaded rod and a piece of tubing to control the spacing. So you cut the threaded rod just a little bit longer so that you can thread those into the rod ends. But for now, we need to kind of see where we need to cut it. Just raising that up a little bit to where I kind of want it. And now that I have both these where they need to be, I can mark this tube, and I'll just cut that tube there, and that's what's going to set the peg position. So we still got clearance to the kickstand arm as well. And if you mess it up, you know, you can re-index this, or you could re-index this. But usually my goal is to keep these two as parallel as possible so that you get a nice even pull. If you're too far angled, it's not going to be, you'll end up pushing it down instead of over. So just want to keep that in mind before you cut this up.
When the silver of this winter night,
Just want to make sure that our threaded rod is about 1.5 inches longer than our tube.
I crawl into my bed and the clouds won't have me, but at least we keep the voice down. Those voices inside my head. What's in the sky? Oh, the stars will never see, and I will carry with me. Oh, those kisses will never bring. When the nights will be haunted by the clanging of the coast of rush, and our worlds are sad and down, and the miles will taunt us with our dreams just turned to dust. But you can't tell where it began. No one's in the sky. All the stars will never see, and I will give with me all those kisses will never